Hi, it's Tina, tourism trainer, facilitator, clarity coach, and founder of the Tourism Space. I live in the country, and that puts me in the minority. Fewer and fewer people are choosing to live the country way of life right around the world. This has become known as a megatrend called urbanization. So welcome to my Tourism and Megatrends series. This is part 3, and this one is all about urbanization. My mission is to help tourism businesses and professionals achieve high performance so they can build businesses and destinations that last. To do that, we certainly need to have a focus on what's happening around us and what's coming down the line. And one of the single biggest drivers in the global society and economy right now is the growth and ongoing growth of our cities. This is referred to as urbanization, one of the world's key megatrends right now. So what is it? Let's quantify this a little bit. It is the migration from the countryside, or the greater and increasing migration from the countryside into the cities. Currently, about 50% of the world's population live in cities. Within the next 10 years, that's expected to grow to 60% of the world's population, and 10 years after that, again, over 70% of the world's population. To give you an idea of the pace at which that's happening, a staggering 1.5 million people per week are added to the urban global population. That is a true statistic. When I heard it the first time, I was going, that can't be true. It is statistically true. 1.5 million people per week globally added to the urban population. So what does that mean for cities? For cities, that has all kinds of knock-on implications. One of the first things is obviously a greater population density. There's more people in a tighter space. This leads to congestion in housing, in traffic, in buildings, on our streets. So the question of managing a greater number of people becomes a very live issue. There's pressures on key services like waste collection, street cleaning, maintenance of recreation areas, and all the other maintenance that our municipal authorities look after. There's also increased pressures on our environment in those compact spaces. So there's a much higher demand for energy, there's a much greater generation of waste, and there's a much higher demand for clean water and a scarcity of water to service those populations in condensed spaces. In that kind of an environment, there's an increased anxiety in people, I guess an increased anxiety about their mental and physical health. The pressures of so many people around them, and also the degradation in the environment. So health becomes quite a priority. And also the tension that arises from living in what have become globalized and very homogenous environments. There's a much greater yearning for difference, for escape, for indulgence, and for that whole rejuvenation and need to recharge. So you can see that without any mention of tourism, the urbanization trend creates in and of itself quite a lot of pressures. Then you add to that the mega trend that is tourism itself. Tourism is growing at pretty much the same pace as urbanization is growing. It now accounts for 10.2% of global GDP. And we expect that 75% more people will be travelling around the world in the next 10 years as have done in the previous 10 years. This move to the cities has led to greater prosperity, and that greater prosperity is fueling the demand and the ability of people to travel. So when you add on the increased number of visitors into cities, we can see how tourism really starts to exacerbate the impacts of urbanization, and some would even say that these two megatrends are in direct collision with each other. To give an example of the scale of this year Bangkok is deemed to be the world's most visited city. It has a population of just over 8 million, but a visiting population of just over 20 million. That's 2.5 times the number of visitors in the city as residents. London has a very similar ratio, and London is the world's second most visited city. It's even more extreme when you look at the case of the third most visited city, which is Paris, which has less than 2.5 million in its resident population, but over 17 million in its visitor population, more than 7 times the amount of visitors in the city as residents. So those cities are long established tourism destinations, but we are seeing similar trends in secondary and emerging cities as tourism develops in those cities. And you can see with those kind of ratios that urbanization and tourism development are going to have to be managed hand in hand. And what does this mean for you? What does it mean in your business? It might depend to an extent whether you're an urban-based business or a rural-based business. Let's take the urban-based businesses first. One of the biggest things for you to be aware of in your business, I guess, is the need to be of a mindset that you are in a community more than a destination. So a shift from a destination mindset to a community mindset. The challenge, I guess, is finding a balance between the rights of your visitors, the rights of your fellow citizens all around you, and achieving an economic benefit for yourself and your city. There's the challenge. So you're going to have to allow time in your business for more collaboration, discussion, meetings, and decision making that involve other people besides just you and your business. Your need and your communication of your own social purpose and social give back is going to be a more important factor in your business, therefore is going to need more time from you. If you're a rural dweller, on the other hand, it's almost the opposite mindset. You're going to have to move from being the mindset of a community to really embracing the mindset of being a destination. And why do I say that? Well, the reason is with these much depleted populations in rural areas, the ability of authorities to provide even the most basic civic services will be in question. The very survival of supports and services for rural communities will depend on a steady inflow of visitors who also require those same services. So the very survival of many rural communities will depend on tourism, and being a destination working together to service the needs of those visitors will be of critical importance. But irrespective of whether you're a rural or urban tourism-based business, there's a number of common themes that everybody will need to take account of in anticipation of increased and current and increased urbanization. And I'm just going to list a few of them here. The first one is the need for a social license, and this is a term that I expect we will hear more and more in tourism terms. No longer will it be acceptable to run profitable tourism businesses at the expense of the quality of life of local citizens and of rural communities and of the environment. So while this is currently more of an informal thing at the moment, we can expect that social licensing as a process and as a formality will become something much more a feature of tourism in the future. That's part of the collaboration. Which is the next point, collaborative planning and decision making, which is going to involve not just governments and policymakers, but increasing partnerships that include governments and policymakers along with communities, residents and businesses. So allowing time and energy and actual commitment to this process will be critical to the long-term success of your business. The third thing is satisfying the demands of urban visitors, which are increasingly being built on this idea of them needing to recharge, rejuvenate and replenish their physical and mental health through holidays. We're seeing an increase in the number of short mini breaks, so the ability to condense opportunities to recharge and rejuvenate in a short space of time will define successful tourism businesses from others. So in your marketing and your product development processes, always be mindful of what it is our visitors are now seeking: escape, rejuvenation, indulgence, connection with nature, and the opportunity to rejuvenate while they're with you. The other thing is to build in ethnicity into your visitor experience. This might also be called cultural diversity or your local place, but the term that we will expect to hear more and more often is ethnicity. Local food and drinks are already very important. They will become more so for every type of tourism operator. Local stories and the ability to meet local people is going to become more and more important. The idea of localhood and ethnicity are totally connected, and this is what visitors who increasingly live in homogenous and globalized cities are going to be looking for. Our difference and our cultural capital will be a key differentiator in the future. So we're moving away from selling our place to sharing our place, to sharing our ethnicity. And this is going to mean things like existing platforms for house swaps and house sharing will advance even further to whole life sharing and whole life swapping. And finally, branding and brand storytelling are going to be one of the key skills for all successful tourism operators into the future. I mentioned this last week as well when we spoke about premiumization, and it's a common theme across many of the megatrends that we will talk about in this series. So branding is no longer optional, for the reason that there's an increased need for differentiation and an increased need for visitors to be able to readily identify with your social purpose, your social conscience and your destination. So there's no shying away from branding. This is a skill that needs to be developed. So they're just my thoughts for now on urbanisation and the phenomenon that is urbanisation in our world globally these days. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back next week with part 4 of our Tourism and Megatrend series, and I hope you'll be able to join me there. And in the meantime, here's to your lasting success.